Dr. Isla Navarro first saw the book under the harsh fluorescence of the evidence locker. It lay in a sealed lucite box, squat as a brick, smelling faintly of salt and iron even through the vents of the container. The homicide detective who summoned her, Lieutenant Park, wore blue latex gloves as though the odor might leak through glass. "Victim's fingerprints are baked onto the leather," Park said. "Looks like he tried to claw the thing open before his heart stopped." Isla made herself look away from the crime scene photographs tacked to the case file. The victim's face, transfixed in an expression of raw alarm, reminded her too much of her brother Nico the last time she'd seen him. Instead, she studied the artifact, noting the unmarked spine, the pages that appeared stitched rather than bound, the faint iridescent shimmer of the ink. "No title, no author," she observed, and her voice sounded calmer than she felt. "How long was he exposed?" "Neighbors heard screaming at 11:42 p.m. CSU got in at 12:10. EMTs called it at 12:12. Park gestured to the tome. They found this open on his desk, text scrawling across the surface like movie credits. As soon as someone else picked it up, the lines froze. Isla's professional interest quickened. She'd spent her career parsing ransom notes, extremist manifestos, and coded online chatter. Words had predictable fingerprints, morpheme preference, grapheme frequency, the mouthfeel of dialect. Books did not move. Books did not know the reader. Yet the lieutenant's body cam footage confirmed it. The moment a gloved CSU tech flipped the first page, letters rippled like minnows under glass, dissolving and reforming into entirely new sentences. The passage displayed for the officer was a harmless bit of pastoral description. The victim, according to the report, had been confronted by a shrieking prophecy of buried alive suffocation, his greatest phobia, according to his partner. "That sounds like adaptive text," Isla murmured. "Interactive algorithms exist, but they live in e-ink tablets or AR lenses, not—" She tapped the lucite. "Not vellum. Do you think it's tech?" Park asked. "I think it's impossible," she said, "which means someone relied on the illusion of impossibility to kill him." Park slid the box toward her. "Then tell me how." Isla signed the chain of custody log, donned her own gloves, and carried the container to the linguistics lab downtown. She dismissed the grad assistants for the night. Whatever this was, it would not be ethical to subject them to it. At 1:10 a.m. she broke the seal. The smell of salt, iron, a whisper of jasmine grew sharper. She eased open the cover. The first page displayed an empty cream-colored field. Then ink bled upward in a slow tide, forming a single sentence. "What is it you fear, Isla Navarro?" She stepped back, pulse hammering. The letters remained static. She reminded herself that suggestions, priming, and self-induced hallucination could follow any sufficiently potent stimulus. Nevertheless, she thumbed to the next page. "Tell me a secret, and I will grant you one." The lines faded. New text overlaid the old. "You seek your brother." She snapped the book shut. The slam echoed around the lab, reverberating off the glass cabinets filled with palimpsests and confessional letters from serial fraudsters. She inhaled once, twice, until the adrenaline settled. Her brother Nico had vanished 12 years earlier during a hiking trip along the Camino Primitivo. No remains, no note, just a pack found beside a cliff. The authorities called it accidental misadventure. Isla sensed something stranger, a missing final chapter that refused to solidify in her mind. Now, this book, engine of shifting text, pretended to know. Ergo, the killer knew. She reopened the cover, forced herself to examine the orthography. The font was variable serif, reminiscent of 15th century humanist minuscule. Ligatures were inconsistent, as if the scribe alternated between writing and carving. She photographed everything, then fetched her software, feeding photos into pattern recognition algorithms. Output returned nonsense, character sets not distributable across Indo-European roots, entropy curves too low for human generation, yet too high for typical ciphers. After an hour of fruitless computation, she shut the laptop and addressed the book directly. "You respond to fear," she said. "Fine, let's negotiate." She flipped to a fresh page and thought, spiders. The ink pooled into a casual anecdote about a rainy afternoon. Nothing eight-legged. She tried again, summoning the memory of a near drowning when she was 7. The book produced a recipe for mulled wine. She frowned. Either the control condition was wrong or something resisted her conscious efforts. She closed her eyes, recalling the moment she had identified her brother's backpack in the Guardia's civil office. The smell of wet canvas, the officer's halting Spanish, the empty plastic ID sleeve. She felt the same throb of helpless, wordless dread. When she opened her eyes, fresh text crawled across the paper. Isla called for you. He called until his voice broke. Isla's stomach folded. The sentence rearranged. You could not hear him across the water, then again, across the years. She tore herself from the page. This was not merely reflecting fear, it was amplifying it. The question remained, how? Sunlight bled into the lab windows before she left, replacing the fluorescence with the forgiving gold. She resealed the book and delivered it to the station's evidence room, documenting every step. Park eyed her wan face. Get sleep, he ordered. We'll convene at noon, she tried, dreaming of shifting letters that crawled across Nico's outstretched palms. At the briefing, CSU reported 0 latent prints beyond the victims. Ink analysis returned elements of carbon, copper, and something they couldn't identify. An isotope whose signature suggested neither terrestrial origin nor known synthetic pathway. The leather binding matched no mammalian profile. The coroner found no signs of physical trauma. The victim's heart had simply stopped mid-scream, as if frightened to arrhythmia. Isla requested the autopsy photos nonetheless. A forensic linguist looked for muscular artifacts in the laryngeal region. Did the last exertions match a screamed phoneme? The tongue position suggested a high front vowel, possibly /I/ah. A cry of please, or perhaps someone's name. She filed that observation, hoping it would matter later. 3 days passed without incident until the second body appeared, a rare books curator named Dr. Alma Koch, discovered by security after she failed to exit the archives at closing. Autopsy same as the first, heart failure, no underlying disease. The book lay open beside her, somehow out of custody, displacing, according to the guard, a single paragraph about blindness and claustrophobia. Isla's chain of custody log was intact. The lucite box in evidence, however, was now filled with a cracked folio of blank paper. Somebody had swapped the artifact. The obvious suspect was Isla herself. She had last accessed it. Park's gaze held questions he didn't voice. She started. Words failed. She had no alibi strong enough to feel unassailable. Internal Affairs sequestered her ID badge. The book was transferred to a high-security vault under biometric lock. And still, Isla received an email at midnight. A scanned page from the book. Subject line, "Your brother waits." No sender. She studied the image. The quality resembled an old fax. Banded gray, text slightly slanted. That skew angle was consistent across historic office scanners manufactured by one company, Tri-Rex Solutions. Before digital flatbeds standardized, Tri-Rex sold only 4,000 units worldwide, mostly to government agencies and universities. The metadata of the attachment retained a machine ID. A quick search placed that unit at the university's closed special collections reading room. Koch's domain. Koch was dead. Someone had used her facilities. Isla borrowed a friend's credentials to access campus after hours. Rain softened the quad sodium lights. In the reading room, rows of medieval manuscripts slept under vacuum glass. Near the western wall, a Tri-Rex scanner squatted behind a dust cover still spattered with fluorescence from latent print dusting. She pulled the dust cover back. Beneath it lay a handwritten note in rust-colored ink. Isla, stop chasing shadows. Bring your fears and trade them. Under the note, an index card bearing coordinates 43rd 86 14.N 61527W. The gorge northwest of Oviedo, where her brother's pack was found. She froze. Nobody knew those exact coordinates except the Guardia Civil, her mother, and herself. She had never included them in any public statement. The book, or the person behind it, possessed real intelligence. Back at her apartment, she spread every shred of data across the dining table. Crime scene photos, textual transcriptions, isotope reports. One column caught her eye. Both victims exhibited raised cortisol levels bordering on toxic. Fear not only killed, but pre-primed the body. She needed to nullify fear, or channel someone else's. Language games, she reminded herself, rely on expectation loops. Disrupt them, and the system reset. The book's text mutated according to fear stimuli. If she could approach it in a state of emotional blankness or overwhelming contradictory emotions, it might stall. She considered beta blockers, meditation, sensory deprivation. None guaranteed success. Then she remembered glossolalia, the trance utterances of charismatics and mystics, speech without semantic anchor. If the book sought semantic fears, feed it syntax devoid of meaning. She bribed a sleep research colleague for access to an anechoic chamber. At 3 a.m. she sat within the padded room, the book resting on her lap. The chamber's silence pressed against her eardrums until she caught the hum of her own blood. She inhaled lavender oil, swallowed 40 mms of propranolol, and began chanting random phoneme strings. Nalavakesh runota, Nalavakesh runota. While flipping pages, the ink hesitated. Letters half-formed, dissolved. She sped the chant, overlaying it with humming, clapping irregular rhythms with her free hand. The text finally congealed into a stable block. You are not listening. I will make you listen. But it was less ornate, less confident. For the first time, the book seemed reactive rather than prophetic. Progress. She halted her nonsense syllables and spoke in a calm, clipped tone. Answer me plainly. Who made you? Lines rearranged. I am the library of the dissolved tongue. Who writes you? Those who fear. Circular. She considered new tactics. Then record this fear. I fear that the one manipulating you believes themselves untouchable. The letters swirled. A name appeared. Adrian Torralba. She blinked. Torralba had been Nico's hiking partner, the last to see him alive. Later, an eccentric computational linguist dabbling in neurosemantics. Blease had interviewed him. He'd provided plausible timelines. After that, he disappeared into a Basque research cooperative. If Torralba was the conductor behind the book, motive aligned. Experimentation, maybe guilt, maybe obsession. He had known Nico's phobias. The river, the dark. He had likely observed Isla's career from afar and decided the game required her. The coordinates beckoned like a hook. She checked transatlantic flights. The next departure left in 4 hours. On approach to Asturias Airport, the sea glittered like hammered tin. Isla rented a compact Escoda and followed the N694 to the gorge. Fog coiled among spruce trunks. She parked at the overlook, where hikers often paused for photos. The place looked unchanged, except for a new wooden rail, and she saw now an iron gate padlocked. Across a descending foot, a figure stood by the gate. Mid-40s, tall, hair prematurely silver. Adrian Torralba. In his left hand he held the book, uncovered, pages fluttering though there was no wind. "Welcome back," he said in Spanish. His voice was smooth, academic, tinged with excitement. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "Hand it over," Isla replied. She kept her tone level. Torralba smiled. "You have questions, I'm sure. Why your brother vanished, why this text exists, but you, more than anyone, understand that meaning is a function of context. Stand here," he pointed beyond the gate, "and context changes." "Did you kill Nico?" She hated how her voice cracked. "The book killed him," Torralba said. "Or rather, his own fear did. I merely offered the medium." "And the others?" "In the pursuit of data, some variables must be tested." He lifted the tome. "Fear shapes language, language shapes reality. Observe." He opened the book to a random page and stared. The ink swarmed, forming lines Isla couldn't read from the distance. Torralba's pupils dilated. His lips murmured without sound. She saw his fingers tremble. "What do you see?" she asked. The culmination, he whispered. Then his expression faltered, delight replaced by something akin to revulsion. No, that's not. Isla seized the moment. She stepped forward, snatched the volume from his hands. As her skin touched the cover, she felt a pulse like a second heartbeat. Torralba made no move to stop her. His eyes were locked on the page now presented to Isla. It showed a single sentence. The author fears his own sentence. Torralba clutched his chest. Anxiety constricted his features. His breath came in ragged gasps. Isla recalled the coroner's reports. The cortisol spikes. This was the trigger. She shoved the book into a canvas bag lined with mylar, exenginal material she'd borrowed from hazmat labs to block radio frequencies. Whether the book used waves or something stranger, she gambled on containment. She cinched the drawstring. Torralba collapsed to his knees but did not die. His pulse, visible in his neck, thundered yet steady. Without the book's active stimulus, the physiological cascade halted. Proof that interaction, not presence, was key. Adrian, she said quietly, you're under arrest for at least 2 murders and whatever happened to my brother. He jumped, Torralba whispered, tears brimming. The text showed him every way the darkness could swallow him. I begged him to look away. He wouldn't. He asked if it could show him a world where he was free of it all. The book obliged. It wrote a ledge that wasn't there, and he stepped onto it. Something in Isla's chest caved. Where is he? At the river's base. The current, Torralba swallowed. I climbed down. The body was gone. 12 years of frozen grief melted into a raw sear. She wanted to strike him, but kept her hands still. You're going to take me there? He nodded, defeated. Together they descended the restricted path. Ropes anchored to pitons guided them along slick slate. At the riverbank, Isla scanned for any trace of old cloth, bone, artifact. Nothing. Only moss-coated rocks and water hurrying toward the sea. Torralba sank onto a boulder. It wasn't supposed to be lethal. The text is possibility, structured potential. I thought if one stares long enough, it reveals truth. But fear weighs the dice. She stared at him. Books don't write themselves. They do when enough readers pour their dread into them. Collective cognition. Information wants form. Hyperbole, perhaps. Yet the book ticked in the bag like a muffled metronome. Isla suddenly felt the weight of every unsolved language puzzle, each file labeled Unc-author, pinned to corkboards by invisible threads. Fear was a crowdsourced author indeed. Helicopter rotors battered the gorge's air. Lieutenant Park rappelled from the skid, quick deployed after Isla's earlier GPS ping and distress code. Officers secured Torralba, read him his rights, and escorted him up the path. Park eyed the bag. Is that the thing? Yes, Isla said. What do we do with it? She watched the river flash under morning sun, wondered how many unnamed terrors it could yet translate. We bury it, she decided, somewhere silent. Months later, a secure black site in the Mojave housed the bag inside nested Faraday cages. Scientists debated whether to destroy or preserve it. Isla attended one final review session. The lead physicist described emergent semiosis matrices, quantum decoherence of lexical states, the possible risk of mimetic phase shifts. Isla listened politely and then spoke. You're overthinking it. It feeds on fear. Stop giving it yours. She walked to the cage, placed a single typed sheet beside the bag. The sheet bore nonsense lullaby phonemes without semantic hooks, the same glossolalia chant she'd invented. Feed it hungers, she told the startled researchers. Feed it this. Empty galleries. Eventually, the appetite shrinks. As she exited into boiling desert sunlight, her phone vibrated. An unknown sender, no attachment, only text. Thank you for listening. No fear stirred in her now. She deleted the message. For once, silence wrote the next line.